Dave Talks Comics, Episode 19. Dave Talks Comics is a collection of my thoughts, memories, and musings on comics I have read. Dave Talks Comics can be found on the web at davetalkscomics.com, on Twitter at davetalkscomics. Email can be sent to dave@davetalkscomics.com. I talk from my notes about these comics. I don't go panel by panel, and I try to do more than just summarize the stories. Offer some commentary or some insight. This is not a spoiler-free podcast. Dave Talks Comics is not a member of the Spoiler-Free Podcast Network. I try not to spoil everything, but in the process of talking about these comics, I will almost certainly spoil them in some way. On this episode, I will be talking about issues 5 and 6 of the early 1990s Warlock reprint miniseries, which I've talked about on earlier episodes. This will wrap up that miniseries. I will also be talking about Marvel Tales issues 209 and 210, which are reprints of issues of Amazing Spider-Man, which feature the first couple appearances of the Punisher. And I will also be talking about my convention plans for 2014. I also wanted to take this moment to say something about the passing of one of the members of the Comic Geek Speak crew, Jamie D'Alessandro. I listened to Comic Geek Speak off and on. It was one of the very first podcasts that I ever heard back in probably 2005 or maybe it was 2006. And it was really before I even got into podcasts, or had heard probably the term podcast, and I was listening to a lot of streaming audio, and but that was one of the first comic book podcasts, probably the first one that I listened to. And he passed away. Jamie had been fighting cancer for a number of years now, and he passed away on May 2nd, I believe, which was about a week ago now. And I just thought it deserved mentioning because he contributed a lot. I always appreciated, even if I didn't agree with him always, I always appreciated his enthusiasm, and he certainly was a major contributor to Comic Geek Speak, to podcasting in general, and to the comic book community, the comic book fandom, and he will be missed. Warlock issues 5 and 6. This is once again the 1992 reprint miniseries. And actually I'm starting at the end of issue 4, not at the beginning of issue 5. The end of issue 4 and rolling over into the beginning of issue 5 is reprinted Warlock number 15 from 1976. And looking now at the original cover to Warlock number 15, I really like it. I think it's really cool. And this was, I think, the last issue of Warlock for that run. I don't think the numbering was picked up again. As I said, this was printed in 1976, in November to be precise. And the title for this story was just a series of events, and that's kind of what it is. It does pick up where Warlock number 14 left off, which was the second part of the Star Killer series, I think it was called. And at the end of that, Adam Warlock had gotten back to Earth, but he had become huge. He was much bigger than the Earth or the Sun or anything, and it had something to do with traveling through a black hole.
And so now he's frustrated. He can't get back to Earth, or he can't land on Earth because he's so large, and it's not like he can shrink and grow at will. He apparently is stuck at this size. So he's well, actually, that's kind of interesting now that I think about it. So anyway, you cut from that to some scenes with Gamora and Thanos, and Thanos has sent Gamora off on a mission. And then you cut back to Adam Warlock, and Adam Warlock encounters in a scene that's similar to from the first issue. He encounters somebody who's being harassed by basically space thugs, and saves him. And basically, it's an old man who's a courier or something like that who transport stuff, and he obviously borrowed money, and so these are loan sharks, basically, alien loan sharks. The man is human or humanoid, and kind of looks like something, the way his spacesuit looks, it looks like something out of old EC comics, something that Al Williamson or Wally Wood might have drawn. But so Adam Warlock deals with the aliens and basically tells the man, look, you better get your money together, because these guys are ready to just, they're out in the middle of space, and they're getting ready to just throw him out into the middle of space and repossess his ship. This alien, or this human. And that's where it kind of leaves off at the end of issue 4 of Warlock. And then in issue 5, it picks up. And something I didn't notice when I read this before until looking at it just now was they actually printed one of the pages on the inside cover of issue 5. And I just completely went right past that, because I don't think I've ever seen that before, because it's almost always given for ad space. And it's a page that has to do with Gamora is in her spaceship, and she looks like she gets attacked by Drax the Destroyer. And her ship explodes. Okay, so then you get into the rest of issue 15, which is being reprinted in issue 5 of Warlock. And the funny thing here is the title says Just a Series of Events Part 3. And Just a Series of Events was the name of issue... Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say issue 15? I meant to say issue 14 of Warlock from 1976. And they give the title here, and they say Part 3 at the beginning of issue 5, but they didn't use that title before, and I'm not sure where the division between Part 1 and Part 2 would be, if that isn't just a typo. So there's some more metaphysical Starlands kind of stuff, where Adam Warlock meets a shaman, and although they still haven't really resolved this, they seem to have just kind of resolve this issue of him growing so big without, I can't believe that all these other things are quite so big, so I'm not sure what's going on there. So basically he goes to this shaman for some information, or yogi, or whatever you want to call him, some sort of wise man, looking for some information about the future. And basically, he's told to look inward, and then I guess towards the end of this story, you get a little bit on Pip the Troll. Pip is in some port, and he's stealing stuff once again, and then finally the issue ends with Adam trying to take the soul gem off his head, but that doesn't quite work, and he ends up on the dark side of the moon? Or is that in the next issue? Let's see. No, he lands on an Earth-type planet, it says. Anyway, that's issue 14 of Warlock, which was the last issue of that series. I'm sorry, that was issue 15. That wasn't issue 14. Issue 15 of Warlock, yeah. Okay, anyway, so that's it for the issues of the original Warlock series from 1976 that are getting reprinted in this collection. Now what you get is Marvel Team Up number 55, which is Spider-Man, of course, who was the feature character in Marvel Team Up, or the mainstay, and teaming up with Adam Warlock. And Spider-Man has just teamed up with the Hulk, and somehow he's ended up in a spaceship, and he's getting rocketed through space, and now guess what? Adam Warlock is huge again. And this issue is not drawn by Jim Starlin, like most of these stories have been. This one is actually drawn by John Byrne, who I believe was the regular penciler on Marvel Team Up at this point. And it's written by Bill Mantlo. Very interesting. So Spider-Man starts off in a spaceship, and he gets rocketed to, I believe it's the dark side of the moon, which actually has a habitable section, which I think is where the Inhumans lived at one point. So, and then Adam Warlock shows up. Actually, Adam Warlock kind of saves Spider-Man. And but then the Stranger apparently is living there. And the Stranger was this big guy who originally appeared in X-Men number 3 or 4, somewhere in the first 10 issues of X-Men, the original run of X-Men from the 60s. And he wants the gem that Adam Warlock has. Apparently he's got a gem in his forehead also. And so he ends up doing battle with Spider-Man and Adam Warlock. And then there's another super powerful. So the Stranger is this guy who's kind of a white-haired, mustached, kind of weird alien guy. Apparently I don't think it was originally designed this way, but he apparently one of the elders of the universe, I think. And it turns out there's another one of these elders of the universe there who also has a gem, and that is some guy named the Gardener, which not the best name or not the most interesting character, I don't think, at least not from this appearance. And he helps them out a little bit, but basically in the end he tries to stay neutral and he can't, and has to interfere with because he sees what the Stranger is doing, and he doesn't feel that it's right to allow the Stranger to kill Adam Warlock and take his gem, or at least to kill Adam Warlock. And he throws in his lot, and the day is saved, but at what price? And the Gardener kind of gives up his dream of having this environment that he had built on the dark side of the moon and takes off. Now, the last two stories in this collection, one which starts here and rolls over into issue 6, was originally appeared in Avengers Annual number 7 from 1977, yes. And this is kind of the last showdown between Adam Warlock. Well, it's not the last, but the first issue is called The Final Threat. And it's written by and drawn, the penciling is by Jim Starlin. And it kind of opens with Adam Warlock finding Gamora. I guess when her spaceship blew up a couple issues back, it didn't destroy her, but she tells him about what Thanos' plans are, and Thanos wants to destroy the universe, basically, for his lover, the woman he loves, death. And then the scene shifts to the Avengers, and Captain Marvel shows up. And so basically what ends up happening is you get this big battle between the Avengers. Well, you get the Avengers, and you get Captain Marvel, and you've got Adam Warlock on one side, and you have Thanos and his minions on the other side. And at this point, the Avengers consist of Beast, Captain America, Iron Man, Moondragon, Scarlet Witch, Thor, Vision, and that's it. So the battle basically begins. They basically take the battle to Thanos. They decide they can't wait. And so they hop in a spaceship, and there's a little bit of retelling of stories that happened before. There was a previous story which I think appeared in Captain Marvel, and I think was also written by Jim Starlin, in which they battled Thanos. And I have not read that one. So basically, Adam Warlock shows up and warns them about what's to pass, and so they take off into space in one of their Quinjets, I think, or I'm not sure, and attack Thanos and his people. And that's where this issue ends. It's not the end of Avengers Annual number 7, but it's the end of that of Warlock number 5, and it just gets increasingly complicated. So basically, the Avengers do battle with Thanos' minions before they realize that Thanos isn't where they think he is. And so at this point, Adam Warlock has already lost Gamora, and then he finds Pip the Troll just about dead or brain dead and kills him by his own hand rather than let him stay that way. And eventually they confront Thanos and... of course, yes. Now, before the battle is over, the story is continued on into Marvel 2-in-1 Marvel 2-in-1 Annual number 2, I believe. Yes, Marvel 2-in-1 Annual number 2, which features, I guess, the team up of, well, all sorts of people. It's officially on the title, on the cover, it says The Thing and Spider-Man, but it also featuring the Avengers. And so basically, The Thing and Spider-Man take one of the Fantastic Four's jets and take off into space and end up and join the battle against Thanos. And Spider-Man ends up proving to be even though he's one of the least powerful of the heroes, he ends up playing a crucial role in this battle. And I guess that's about it. I mean, obviously the Avengers and company and Spider-Man and The Thing and Warlock, etc., in the end are all successful in their battle against Thanos, in that Thanos is defeated. And there are some panels here that I had seen before in other issues. Possibly they are reprinted in the Infinity Gauntlet, which is the next story that Thanos appears in. I think that's the next time he really threatens the universe. I mean, it's all in all, I'd say this is a very good story. I really enjoyed the ending. I don't think it's anything groundbreaking. I mean, well, well, that's not true. I think at the time it probably was something groundbreaking. It probably was on a level but depending on how long you've been reading comics, this may or may not impress you. I think it's a good story. I think it's a good superhero story. I think it stands up to a lot of the other stories. I think the artwork is very nice. The sequential storytelling is great. I think the directions the story goes in, I don't think it's not all extremely, well, it's not all too predictable but I thought it was a good read. I thought it was worth my time. I'm glad that I can now say that I've read it. And I can't think of anything else to say about this. I don't plan to read any more. I don't have any more plans to read any more Warlock stuff. At some point, I would like to read or get back to reading some of Starlin's other work, specifically his run on his creator-owned book, which was called... and now I'm blanking on the title. Jim Starlin, Dreadstar. That's what it's called, Dreadstar. Much of which I've read, but it's been a long time and I would like to reread it. So that's it for Warlock, the 1992 reprint miniseries of Warlock. Marvel Tales number 209 and 210. These are reprints of issues of Amazing Spider-Man. Marvel Tales number 209 is the beginning of a series of reprints of the Punisher's appearances in Amazing Spider-Man. I talked about this a little bit on a previous episode of Dave Talks Comics. It was probably one of the first 2 or 3 episodes. But at some point during the 80s, let's see, around 1988, I believe, they decided to reprint all of the Punisher's appearances, probably because the original appearances were getting kind of pricey because the Punisher was getting very popular. So number 209 reprints Amazing Spider-Man number 129, which was the first appearance of the Punisher. And the other thing they did with all of these was all of these reprints, they did new covers for them, and they are all drawn by Mike Zeck. And so first cover, I think it's pretty good. I'm not sure if I like it as much as the original cover or the cover to Amazing Spider-Man number 129, but I think it's pretty good. Once again, you have Spider-Man in a bullseye, and you have the Punisher, except for this time instead of a rifle, he's got his, I don't know if there's a 9mm or what they are that he's holding, but two pistols. So this issue opens not with Spider-Man, but with the Punisher and the Jackal, who I guess is a Spider-Man villain. And the Jackal has basically tricked the Punisher into thinking that Spider-Man is worse than he is. And I guess also what you need to understand with this, some background information, is that this is about a year, not even quite a year after the death of the death of Gwen Stacy and the Green Goblin. And Spider-Man has been blamed for the death of Norman Osborn, who was the original Green Goblin, even though the Green Goblin was actually responsible for his own death in an attempt to kill Spider-Man. And I talked about that on a previous episode of Dave Talks Comics. So Spider-Man's kind of been on the run from the police, and you actually get a little bit of a recap here of stuff that's happened in recent issues, including let me find it, and now I'm having trouble finding it. I didn't think it was this far into the issue. Nope, I'm all the way through the issue. Okay. Backing up. You know what? I think it's in the next issue. Okay. So this is issue 129 this is a reprint of issue 129, which was the first appearance of the Punisher, like I said. And the Punisher looks a little different. He doesn't look quite as young. He looks a little older. I think from the beginning he was supposed to be a Vietnam vet, and he was supposed to have been a Marine. And so basically he's been tricked by the Jackal. And I don't know that much about the Jackal, but he's obviously, as I said before, a Spider-Man villain. And so basically Spider-Man has a couple run-ins with the Punisher, and the first time out he ends up having to run away, and although he kind of knocks the Punisher down a notch. And then eventually, by the end of the issue, the Punisher is... Spider-Man convinces the Punisher that it's the Jackal is the one who's to blame, and I think that's, that kind of sums it up. It's a pretty good issue. It's written by Jerry Conway and drawn by Ross Andrew. He's credited as the artist, which I assume means penciler, because you also have some inkers credited here. So this was a pretty good read and worth it. And there's also in this issue I didn't read it, but there's a Peter Porker, the Spectacular Spider-Ham. Peter Porker, the Spectacular Spider-Ham. It's like 5 or 6 page story, but I didn't bother with that. So anyway, moving on. Marvel Tales number 210. Now this is, I guess, the Punisher's second appearance in Amazing Spider-Man, but it's not much of an appearance. He only appears on the last page of the story. And you see his feet, then you see his leg, then you see his gun, then you see him, Spider-Man's kind of, okay, anyway. So you really don't get much of the Punisher in this issue. But the cover is still drawn by Mike Zeck. The main bad guy in this issue is Tarantula. And for the most part, this issue takes place on a ferry ride. This is a reprint of Amazing Spider-Man number 134. So this is about half a year, about 5 months later in publishing time after the previous issue. And I guess the Punisher has not been seen since then. This is where you get a recap of a number of events that have happened in the past few issues. There was Dr. Octopus's attempt to marry Aunt May, and a couple other events. So this issue, for the most part, this takes place on this ferry ride that's going around Manhattan, or at least along one of the rivers that's right by Manhattan. And everything seems calm and peaceful. Peter Parker's out there with Mary Jane and Liz Allen and Flash Thompson. And then, of course, something has to go wrong. So the ferry kind of gets hijacked by the Tarantula. And the Tarantula is, I guess, another spider-themed character, a villain in this case. And he has this red and black or blue outfit, and he's got these really pointy shoes. And I remember reading a comic book with the Tarantula. It may have even been, I believe he appeared in the first issue of Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man, and it may have been even that one that I had when I was much younger, but I don't have that anymore, and so I'm not really, and I don't have any distinct memory of which issue it was. Maybe if I read that, I could confirm one way or the other. So for the most part, this issue takes place on a ferry ride. At one point, Spider-Man leaves the ferry because one of the crewmen on the ferry gets knocked overboard. He has to save him, and so he gets him to safety, puts him up on one of the bridges, and then realizes that he's run out of web fluid and can't get back to the ferry all that easily. He actually has to go home, get more web fluid, and the only other thing I guess worth mentioning in this issue is that once again you have, I always think it's funny that Flash Thompson, who used to beat up or pick on Peter Parker, is also Spider-Man's number one fan. And while he's in pretty good shape, he's no match for some of these bad guys. He attempts to help out Spider-Man, but he really isn't very successful in doing that. So this series of reprints in Marvel Tales of issues, I think it's for the most part just Amazing Spider-Man, maybe entirely Amazing Spider-Man, continue for a while, and they all have Mike Zeck covers. These are the only two issues that I've bought so far. So that's it for Marvel Tales issues 209 and 210. (2014) comic book cons. I'm looking ahead at the schedule. I more or less made my decision as to which conventions I'm going to attend this year. Last year I only made it to the Comic Geek Speak Super Show in Reading, which was, I believe, in April, or maybe it was May. I think it was April. And also Otakon, which is actually an anime and manga show. I had wanted to go to Heroes Con. I'd wanted to go to the Baltimore Comic Con, but other family stuff came up, and so I couldn't make it to either of those. But this year, the first con, and I know the con season has already begun. I think Emerald City was just recently, and there's some convention this weekend, but my plans are, the first con I want to go to is the Appleseed Con, which is in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and that is May 16th and 17th. And I think this is just the second year that the Appleseed Con has been held. And the organizer is Zach Crucy, who for a while there, I'm not sure if it's over or just on a long hiatus, was part of the team that does the Quad, which is another podcast on the subject of comic books and other stuff. But I imagine he's fairly busy right now with trying to get things pulled together for the Appleseed, and I think he's married and has kids as well, so that may take up some of his time. The second show I'm planning to go to is in June, and I'm not sure on the dates exactly, but it's I think like around the 21st or somewhere around there, and that's Heroes Con in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I've gone to Heroes Con before. This will be like the 32nd or something like that. Not year that I've gone, but year that the convention has been held. And I went in 2011 and 2012, and I had a lot of fun. It's a big show, but it's not so big that it's wall-to-wall packed, but it's a fun show, and if you can go, I recommend it. If you can go on Friday, I recommend it. Saturday, of course, is the busiest. It's a 3-day show, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Friday is much more calm than Saturday or Sunday are. So if you can get in on Friday, it's a good idea. And they have a lot of great panels, panel discussions on various things. And so the next show that I want to go to, and this one is much closer to home, is the Baltimore Comic-Con, which is going to be September 7th, 8th, and 9th. I'm not sure if I'm going to go for all 3 days. This is the first year that they've expanded it to 3 days, but I definitely plan on going. It's another great show like Heroes Con, and they don't have quite as much as, it's not quite as big as Heroes Con is, or at least it wasn't the last time I went. I went in 2010, 11, and 12, and all 3 times were a lot of fun. They have a lot of great artists there. They have a number of panels there, not as much as at Heroes. They have lots of sellers there, vendors selling books and stuff like that, and a lot of people in costume, and I don't know, I think it's a lot of fun. And then the last show that I'm probably going to go to is SPX, the Small Press Expo. And I don't think a date has been set for that yet, but that's usually like the week after or 2 weeks after the Baltimore Comic-Con. And that's a much different kind of show than either Heroes Con or Baltimore is. And because it's all small press, you don't have any of the big, no publisher. Well, that's not true. There are some publishers there, but you won't find DC or Marvel and it's, for the most part, it's either publishers or it's, what you don't have there is you don't have vendors. You don't have people there just selling stuff, retailers. It's all either publishers or creators. And they do a huge number of panels, and they have some really interesting discussions, and it's a lot of fun. I first went back in, I think, 2002 and 2003, and then I didn't go for a number of years until 2009. I went in 2009, 10, 11, and 12, and I wasn't able to make it last year. So those are my convention plans for 2014, and hopefully I can make it to all those shows. Okay, here are a few editor's notes, updates on things that I said. I talked about, when I was talking about Warlock, I talked about The Stranger. I said that he first appeared within the first 10 issues of the original run of the X-Men, and actually I was wrong on that. He first appeared in in X-Men number 11, which had a cover date of May 1965. The other super powerful creature who appeared in that issue was the Gardener, and that issue being Marvel Team-Up number 55, and that was actually the first appearance of the Gardener. He would go on to have a number of other appearances, although actually not that many, considering that his first appearance was back in 1977. And I'm getting this information from Comic Book DB, which can be found on the web at comicbookdb.com, and I think it's a great resource for digging up information. It's a fan-created website, so I can't promise you that all the information is correct, but I'm pretty sure that those two pieces of information are. The other thing that I wanted to provide an update on is the dates for the conventions that I'm planning on going to. First off, in May, the Appleseed Comic-Con is May 17th and 18th. I believe I said something else earlier. Heroes Con and Appleseed is in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And Heroes Con in Charlotte, North Carolina is June 20th, 21st, and 22nd. Then Baltimore Comic-Con in, of course, Baltimore, Maryland is September 5, 6, and 7 this year. And then finally, the Small Press Expo. The dates have been announced, and it is September 13th and 14th. So that is the weekend following the Baltimore Comic-Con, and it's not too far from Baltimore. It's just outside of D.C. in what I believe they call North Bethesda, Maryland.
That's it for this episode of Dave Talks Comics. Questions or comments can be posted on the episode page at davetalkscomics.com, or you can tweet them to Dave Talks Comics. You can email your questions or comments to dave@davetalkscomics.